The morning everything collapsed. I was not even in the building anymore. I heard about it through a panicked voicemail from a former coworker, her voice shaking as she begged me to call back. But by then, the damage was already spreading through HorizonCore's veins, faster than anyone inside could stop. Inside the company's emergency war room, the tension broke long before the system did. I later heard how the executives flooded in with half-zipped jackets and unfinished coffees, how the walls echoed with alerts, and how every dashboard on the main monitor bled red. Customer portals froze. Shipping routes refused to load. Contracts stalled mid-transaction. The entire network, the one I had held together for years, was falling apart from the inside. And at the center of the chaos stood Grant Halverson, HorizonCore's chief executive. People told me he rarely raised his voice, but that morning he slammed both hands on the conference table so hard the room went silent. Who taunted her, he shouted. Who told her to quit? Stand up, now. No one moved. No one breathed. Then, slowly, every head turned toward the same corner of the room toward Evan, Grant's 25-year-old son, the one they had rushed into a title he did not understand and responsibility he never earned. Evan kept staring at the floor. His jaw moved like he wanted to speak, but nothing came out. Someone whispered that he looked like a kid who had finally realized the fire he started was real. Grant's voice broke again, lower now but sharper. Do not make me repeat myself. Behind him, the monitors flashed another wave of errors, systems disconnecting, internal tools locking themselves. Every failure traced back to one decision the moment I walked out with my resignation, the moment they let me go without understanding what they were losing. This disaster did not begin today, I said quietly as I replayed that voicemail. It began 5 days ago, with one careless sentence, and to explain how a single remark brought a company to its knees. I have to go back to the last conversation I ever had inside HorizonCore, back to the day HR called me in. 5 days earlier, before the collapse, I was still sitting under the hum of HorizonCore's ceiling lights, trying to finish overnight reports when the HR message popped up on my screen. Marin, could you stop by for a quick chat? The phrasing alone was enough to make my stomach tighten. HR never wanted a quick chat unless something unpleasant waited behind the door. When I stepped into the small conference room, Lydia Marsh, the HR representative, stood quickly, too quickly, with a smile that stretched more than it shone. Marin, thank you for coming. Please, sit. Her voice was airy, but her fingers twisted the cap of her pen like she was trying to break it. What's going on? I asked, lowering myself into the chair opposite her. She inhaled sharply, smoothing her blouse as if that would steady her nerves. We're making some organizational updates. Nothing major. She paused, forcing her smile wider. We're bringing in a new manager for your division. Just a fresh perspective, someone young. I felt a pinch behind my ribs. How young Lydia's eyes flicked to the door before she answered. He is 25. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. 25 and managing the systems architecture team. Well, she chirped, he will have support, and you have so much experience. Marin, it will be great for you to guide him, mentor him. I stared at her. I have built this system from the ground up. I have documented every line, every protocol. I have trained 3 full teams under it. And you want me to report to someone who wasn't even in college when this company launched? Her smile faltered. Change is good. It shows flexibility. Or it shows something else, I said quietly. Lydia's gaze shot to the door again. Someone walked by outside, and she stiffened so visibly it made my skin prickle. She was hiding something, or protecting someone. She leaned in, lowering her voice. Marin, just try to be open to this. All right, it is not my call. I can see that, I replied. Whose call was it? Her throat bobbed, and she looked away instead of answering. The meeting ended with no clarity and far too many unspoken truths. But as I stepped out into the hallway, the silence felt heavy, like the building itself was waiting for something I had not been told. I walked out of HR with Lydia's forced smile still clinging to me like static. Every word she said kept circling my mind. Young manager, fresh perspective, 25. None of it made sense. None of it felt accidental. I tried to steady my breathing as I headed down the corridor toward my desk. I heard the laugh before I saw him. A short, breathy sound, like someone amused at a private joke. When I turned, Evan Halverson leaned against the wall, arms crossed, a smirk pulling at the corner of his mouth. He did not bother pretending he had been waiting for anything except the moment I saw him. "So," he said lightly, "did they tell you I stared at him? Tell me that I'm taking over your division." His smile widened. "Big changes coming, Marin. Should be fun." My chest tightened. "You have never worked on our architecture. You do not even know the underlying framework." He shrugged. "Details. I will learn. Eventually." Then he tilted his head. "But if you cannot handle having a younger boss, then just quit." He said it like he was suggesting a coffee order. Casual, thoughtless, cruel without even trying. I opened my mouth, but nothing came. Not because I lacked words, but because the words no longer mattered. He had never respected me. He had never even tried to. And the people who should have defended the work I built had already stepped aside. Evan pushed off the wall. "Seriously, Marin, no hard feelings. Some people are just not meant for big shifts. That is life." He walked past me, humming to himself, not bothering to look back. Two analysts at the end of the hall froze when our eyes met, then immediately looked away. No one spoke. No one stepped forward. The silence felt heavier than the insult. I turned and walked toward my desk. My hands did not shake. My voice did not crack. I sat down, opened a blank document, and typed out my resignation one sentence. Firm and clean. I hit print. And the moment the paper slid out of the machine, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I returned to my desk with the printed resignation in my hand. No trembling, no second thoughts. Just a quiet, steady certainty that rose deeper than anger. I had spent years holding this place together. I had already given enough. I slid into my chair and opened my workstation. My teammate Riley glanced over from across the aisle. "Marin, you okay?" he whispered. "I am fine," I said, keeping my voice even. "Just tying up loose ends." He looked as if he wanted to say more, but then he spotted Evan turning the corner and immediately bent back over his screen. I began backing up my personal files, old documents, code snippets I had written on my own time, notes from projects that never saw the light of day. Nothing belonging to the company left with me, nothing questionable, everything clean. Then I opened the admin dashboard. The system greeted me with its familiar cascade of access windows. My access windows. I began signing out of every restricted vault security clusters, staging environments, the root architecture map. Each one required a confirmation step. Each one felt like cutting a string I had once held tightly. Riley watched me do it. "You are removing everything," he murmured. "I am following protocol," I replied. "All credentials must be closed when an engineer leaves. Those are the rules." "What happened?" he asked softly. "Nothing new," I said. "I am just finally listening." I logged out of the final vault. The screen dimmed, leaving me facing nothing but a blank desktop, without sabotage, without a single line of altered code. I still knew exactly what my absence would mean. Not immediately, but soon. They had never trained anyone else to maintain the architecture I built. Not because I refused, because they assumed I would always be here. I placed my company ID badge neatly beside my keyboard. The plastic clicked against the desk louder than it should have. 2 employees passing by slowed when they saw it. One offered a sympathetic nod, the other looked away as if eye contact might pull them into trouble. I picked up my bag and stood. No one stopped me. When the elevator doors closed behind me, I felt the weight lift, sharp and liberating, and the moment I stepped out into the damp Seattle air, something inside me settled. I was done carrying a company that never carried me back. Now they would face what came next. On the first day after I left, I received a short message from Riley. Not urgent, but the sync monitor blipped this morning. Might be nothing. I knew exactly what he meant. A tiny stutter in the load balancer. The kind of thing only someone who understood the architecture deeply would notice. I typed a reply, then deleted it. The system was no longer mine to save. On the second day, he wrote again. Customer queues drifted by a few seconds. Evan said it's normal. Is it? I stared at the screen for a long time before closing the message unopened. Inside HorizonCore, the tension was building. Riley later told me 2 engineers flagged the issue in the morning stand-up. Maybe Marin should take a look. One of them suggested quietly. Evan cut him off immediately. No. We are cleaning house. Everything she touched needs to be replaced with streamlined protocols. They exchanged uneasy glances. No one argued. On the third day, Evan walked into the IT bay with the confidence of someone who had never tested a system in production. Delete her old permissions, he ordered. All of them. The architecture should not still be tied to her credentials. Riley tried to protest, but the routing keys those were built using her original access. If we cut those without Evan waved him off, you are overcomplicating this. Just delete them. We are moving forward. So they did. And with every permission removed, the system lost another piece of its foundation. By the 4th day, the logs were a mess, unreadable strings, modules drifting out of sync, timestamps collapsing into nonsense. Riley approached Evan again. We are losing stability. If Marin were here, Evan's eyes narrowed. Do not bring her up again. I am handling it. Everything is fine. But nothing was fine. The senior engineers whispered among themselves, comparing fragments of corrupted data, each one more alarming than the last. No one dared escalate beyond Evan. No one dared challenge the CEO's son. And just beneath the surface of the company's confidence, fear was growing fast enough to make the walls feel tight. It happened just after 8 in the morning. Riley told me later that the first alert hit his screen before he had even taken a sip of coffee. A red banner flashed across the dashboard, then another, then a full cascade of warnings that rolled faster than anyone could click. Within minutes, the entire operations floor erupted. Why are the contracts freezing? Someone shouted. They are not freezing. They are disappearing. Another voice snapped back. Customer support calls poured in non-stop. Deliveries vanished from the tracking system. Route predictions flatlined. Every piece of the architecture that depended on synchronized keys Evan had forced them to delete started collapsing in on itself. Riley said the engineers tried to reroute manually, but the system rejected every override. This is not a bug, he whispered to his teammate. Something triggered a chain reaction. Meanwhile, shareholders flooded Grant Halverson's phone lines demanding answers. Department heads shouted over one another. Someone tried to reboot the main scheduler and nearly crashed the last stable node. The IT lead, Trevor, sprinted into the executive wing with a tablet in hand. Grant, we need an audit, he said breathlessly. Right now, this is structural. Grant, who had been pacing in the corner, turned sharply. Run it. All of it. Every change in the last week. Trevor pushed a few commands, then froze. Sir, the logs are showing unauthorized adjustments to the architecture keys. Grant moved closer. Who made them? Trevor swallowed hard. They were executed under Evan's login. The room went silent except for the sounds of incoming calls and alarms. Grant's shoulders stiffened. He looked around at the board members, the directors, the engineers standing with pale faces. The truth was written in the data, and in the fear no one could hide. This entire collapse started with those permissions. Trevor said. They destabilized the load balancer Marin designed. Grant's jaw tightened. Get my son in here. Riley watched from the far corner of the room as Grant's expression hardened into something he had never seen on the man's face before, disbelief mixing with fury. And in that moment, everyone understood what was coming. I heard the details later from Riley, but the scene unfolded almost exactly as I imagined it would. Grant stormed into the war room with the audit results clenched in his fist. The executives, department heads, and engineers lined the walls, each one praying not to be the first name he called. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. Who made these changes he demanded? Who deleted her permissions? I want a name. No one answered. Grant slammed the papers onto the table. I will not ask again. A junior engineer standing near the back. Michael, barely 2 years into the company, looked down at his shoes, then lifted his hand a few inches. His voice trembled. Sir, it was Evan. He told Marin to quit, and then he told us to wipe her keys. The room exhaled in one shared, terrified breath. Grant's face drained of color. He stared at Michael, then turned his gaze to his son, who stood rigid near the door. Evan tried to speak. Dad, that is not enough, Grant snapped. He dismissed the entire room with a single gesture. Chairs scraped, papers rushed into arms. No one dared look at Evan as they filed out. Riley said it felt like watching a building collapse in slow motion. When the door shut, Grant grabbed Evan by the arm and pulled him into his office. The shouting started almost immediately, muffled but unmistakable. Accusations, denials. Something slammed against a desk. Someone swore loudly enough for the hallway to hear. By late afternoon, the yelling stopped. Evan left the building without speaking to anyone. And that evening, as I was washing dishes in my apartment, my phone buzzed with an email notification. From Grant Halverson, subject. We need your help. The message was short. Marin, please meet with me. I know we have no right to ask, but the company cannot recover without you. For the first time in my years at HorizonCore, the power was no longer in their hands. It was in mine. Grant chose a quiet cafe near Lake Union, the same neighborhood where HorizonCore hosted its early investor meetings years ago. I arrived a few minutes late, and he was already seated, shoulders hunched, fingers clenched around an untouched cup of coffee. He looked older than I remembered, like the past 5 days had stripped years from him. He stood when he saw me. Marin, thank you for coming. I am not here for pleasantries, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I know. He sank back into his chair. I am sorry for all of it, for not seeing how much we depended on you, for letting Evan. He stopped, swallowing hard. I should have intervened sooner. I sat across from him. Do you want an apology accepted, or do you want your system stabilized? Both, he admitted. His voice cracked around the word. But I will take the second if it is all you can give. He leaned in. Marin, I need your help. The company will not recover without you. Every contract is at risk. If this continues, we could lose tens of millions within weeks. I let him speak. For once, he was not the one holding the power. When he finished, I opened the folder I brought with me. If you want my help, these are my terms. Grant exhaled as if bracing for impact. I will not return as an employee, I said. I will work as an independent consultant. He nodded. Evan is to be removed from all system access immediately, already in motion, he replied. My authorship of the core architecture will be formally recognized in writing. No more erasing my work. Absolutely. And my payment will reflect the actual value I bring. You will compensate me based on emergency infrastructure repair rates. I expect fairness. Grant reached for the pen without hesitation. Done. He signed everything, no bargaining, no deflection, no ego. When he slid the folder back toward me, I saw something in his expression I had never seen before: genuine understanding. For the first time since joining HorizonCore, someone in power finally listened, and now that I had stepped back into the fight on my terms, there was only one thing left to resolve. I began the stabilization work that same evening, logging into the system from my apartment with the temporary consultant credentials Grant issued. The structure was a mess: modules drifting, authorization loops spinning in circles, but it was salvageable. I worked quietly, line by line, while HorizonCore unraveled in ways code alone could not fix. By the second day, the board launched a formal investigation. Grant kept his distance from me but sent brief updates. Internal review is underway. One message read. Another. The board is not pleased. By the third day, the findings were impossible to dispute. I heard later how the board chair confronted Evan in a conference room filled with grim-faced directors. "You overrode critical protocols," she said. "You lied about what Marin did. You risked multi-million-dollar contracts with reckless decisions." Evan tried to defend himself. I was cleaning up her outdated processes. A director cut him off. Her processes were the only thing keeping this company alive. Grant did not speak until the end. When he finally did, his voice was flat. "You endangered our clients and our employees. This was not innovation. It was negligence." On the fourth day, Evan lost all system access. His badge stopped working. His name was removed from internal tools. On the fifth day, Human Resources delivered the official notice termination for negligence causing operational collapse. 1 week after the meltdown, the same man who once leaned against a hallway wall and told me to just quit was escorted out of HorizonCore's lobby. Employees whispered as he passed. Some looked away. Some watched openly. No one stopped him. I finished repairing the last major subsystem that same afternoon, and with Evan gone and the company finally seeing itself clearly, I realized it was time to decide what came next for me. I wrapped up my final tasks on a quiet Tuesday evening. The last diagnostics ran smoothly, the routing keys held steady, and the architecture restored, documented, and future-proofed was stable enough to survive whoever inherited it. I sent the final report to Grant with a brief note. "This concludes my contracted work. The system is yours now." Minutes later, he called. "Marin," he said, his tone softer than I had ever heard it. "Are you sure you will not stay a little longer? We can discuss a new role. Something senior. Something equal." "I appreciate the offer," I said, "but my answer is no." He exhaled, a sound heavy with acceptance. "Then thank you. For everything." I ended the call and closed the laptop without looking back. 2 days later, I filed the paperwork for Ellery Systems Advisory, a consultancy run out of a modest office near Westlake. No fancy furniture, no oversized logo, just a desk, a whiteboard, and a quiet certainty that this time I was building something that belonged entirely to me. The first inquiry arrived before I even finished setting up my voicemail. Then a second. Then a third. Former clients from HorizonCore reached out, each one asking if I would consider reviewing their integrations or advising their teams directly. Riley sent a message too. "Congrats. Marin, you deserve this. More than anyone." I kept working, slowly filling the space with the sound of my own choices. Meanwhile, HorizonCore released an internal memo. Grant forwarded it to me with no commentary. "Evan Halverson will not be reinstated. His access, title, and privileges are permanently revoked. The company would survive, but not unchanged, not untouched. They would never forget the week they learned what my absence could cost." One evening, as I locked up my new office, I thought back to the hallway where Evan had smirked and told me to quit. I felt no anger now, only clarity. He told me to quit. I murmured. He never imagined quitting would be the beginning of my rise.